You don't lose your value when someone stops seeing it. That's on them. They just lose their spot in your life. Still, most of us end up waiting around, hoping they'll come back, practically pleading for them to return. But what if the strongest thing you can do isn't chasing or fixing or explaining? What if it's just going quiet and watching what happens? I remember sitting across from someone I really loved, someone I shared all these memories with, whose opinion felt like oxygen. I was pouring my heart out, desperate for them to really see me. What hurt the most wasn't what they said, it was the silence. It was the way their eyes drifted, like they'd already left long before I realized it. That's a different kind of heartbreak. You suddenly see you're the only one still reaching out, still caring, still fighting. It's like you're gripping a rope with everything you've got, only to realize the other end isn't tied to anything anymore. You're just pulling on air, but you keep holding tight, because letting go feels like falling into nothing. I spent ages in that spot, explaining, proving, trying to fit into whatever small space they offered. You start wondering if you're the problem, maybe if you just tried a little harder, smiled more, argued less, made yourself easier to love. Maybe then they'd want you back. We panic when someone stops caring because somewhere along the way we started tying our worth to their attention. We measure our value by their ability to care about us. And when they stop seeing us, we stop seeing ourselves. That's the trap. It's not just losing them, it's losing your own reflection. Because when someone you love no longer values you, it almost feels like you disappear too. But I've learned something after years of watching people wrestle with heartbreak, and honestly, living through it myself. The more we chase after people who don't value us, the more we teach them that it's okay to treat us that way. Every time we over-explain or keep proving our worth, we're not just reaching out, we're teaching them. You can treat me like this, and I'll still be here. It's not because we're weak. It's because we're scared. The fear of being left behind is so strong. We'd rather accept crumbs than deal with being alone at an empty table. Here's what changed everything for me. Stop explaining. Stop chasing. Stop performing. Leave the silence alone. Don't fill it with reasons or apologies. Silence isn't punishment, it's a boundary. It's not about revenge, it's self-respect. When you stop trying to convince someone to value you, you finally give yourself the chance to start valuing you. And sometimes, the bravest, kindest thing you can do is just stand up and walk away. No door slang, no drama, no tears. Just a quiet step back toward yourself. There's this fear, this gnawing feeling that if you stop trying, if you go silent, you'll just vanish from their life, erased completely. I've felt it. I've sat awake at night, dying to send that one more text, searching for the perfect words to remind them I exist. Deep down, I thought if I didn't keep showing up, they'd forget me. I thought silence meant losing everything. Nobody tells you this fear isn't just in your head, it's wired into us. Human brains are built to crave connection. We'll abandon ourselves before we risk someone else abandoning us. We'll trade away our dignity just to stay in someone's line of sight. We beg to be remembered, even by people who made us feel invisible. But here's what really got me. Once I started understanding how people work. When you stop knocking, when you finally go quiet, the human brain doesn't just let you go. Psychology shows us that absence hits harder than presence. If someone's used to you checking in, explaining, always being there, your sudden silence grabs their attention. It creates this uncomfortable space, a vacuum. And people hate emotional vacuums they notice when you're not there. It's called the withdrawal effect. When you disappear from someone's daily life, their mind registers that absence even more sharply than all the noise you made before. You don't have to beg to be remembered. You don't have to prove you're still there. Just be silent. That's enough. You don't lose your worth when someone stops valuing you. They just lose their seat at your table. But here's the brutal truth. Most of us stay standing there waiting, begging them to sit back down. What if I told you the most powerful thing you could do is not to chase, not to fix, but to simply go silent and watch? I remember sitting across from someone I loved, someone I had built memory with, someone whose opinion I thought I couldn't live without. I was pouring out my heart, desperately trying to make them see me, really see me. But what broke me wasn't their words, it was their silence. It was the way their eyes drifted away, as if they had already left the room long before I ever walked in. It's a brutal kind of heartbreak. The moment you realize you are the only one still reaching, still caring, still fighting. It's like you're holding a rope with both hands, pulling with everything you've got, only to realize the rope has been cut on the other end. You're pulling on nothing. But you keep holding on, because letting go feels like falling into an abyss. I spent so many days, maybe even years in that space, over-explaining, proving, justifying, twisting myself into smaller and smaller shapes so I could still fit into their shrinking circle of care. You start to wonder if maybe you're just not good enough. Maybe if you try harder, maybe if you smile more, argue less, make yourself easier to love, maybe then they'll stay. Maybe then they'll value you again. But here's the thing, we panic when people stop valuing us because somewhere along the way, we started tying our worth to their attention. We started measuring our enoughness based on their capacity to care. And when they stop seeing us, we stop seeing ourselves. That's the trap. It's not just about losing a person, it's about losing our reflection. Because when someone we love doesn't value us anymore, it feels like we disappear too. But I've come to understand something through years of studying human behavior, through sitting with people in the thick of their heartbreak. The more we chase people who devalue us, the more we teach them that it's okay to devalue us. Every time we overextend, every time we explain for the 100th time why we matter, we're not just reaching, we're reinforcing. We're silently telling them, you can treat me this way, I'll still be here. It's not because we're weak. It's because we're terrified. We fear abandonment so deeply that we'd rather settle for crumbs than face the possibility of being alone at an empty table. But here's the trick that changed my life. Stop explaining. Stop chasing. Stop performing. Stop filling the silence with justifications. Because silence isn't a punishment, it's a boundary. Silence isn't revenge, it's self-respect. When you stop trying to convince someone to value you, you open the door for you to start valuing you. And sometimes the loudest, most loving thing you can do is simply stand up from that table and walk away without slamming the door, without shouting, without tears streaming down your face. Just a quiet, steady step toward yourself. The quiet terror that if we stop reaching out, if we stop trying, if we dare to go silent, we'll simply vanish from their mind like we were never really there to begin with. I've lived in that fear. I've sat with it at midnight when the urge to send a text felt unbearable. I've stared at my phone, crafting the perfect sentence, the perfect reason to stay relevant, to remind them I still existed. Because deep down, I believed that if I didn't keep showing up, if I didn't keep knocking, they'd forget me. I thought silence was a death sentence. I thought the only way to stay in someone's life was to fight for space in their memory. What no one told me is that this fear isn't just emotional, it's biological. Our brains are wired to crave connection. The human attachment system is so powerful that we will abandon ourselves just to avoid the sensation of being abandoned by someone else. We'll sacrifice our dignity to stay in someone's peripheral vision. We'll beg to be remembered even by the very people who made us feel invisible in the first place. But here's what shook me when I started really studying human behavior. When you go silent, when you finally stop knocking on their door, the human brain doesn't move on as quickly as you think. In fact, psychology teaches us that the absence of something is felt more powerfully than its constant presence. And someone is used to you being there, explaining, checking in, trying, chasing. Your sudden silence doesn't go unnoticed. It creates a vacuum, a space. And humans are profoundly uncomfortable with emotional vacuums. It's called the withdrawal effect. When you remove yourself from someone's daily rhythm, their brain registers that absence more intensely than the noise you made while you were there. You don't need to beg to be remembered. You don't need to keep proving your presence. The mind's wired to spot what's missing, the real heartbreak. We spend years trying not to fade from the memories of people who already made us feel invisible. We fight to stay in places that never opened the door for us in the first place, and this is where fear hits hard. It's not about being forgotten by just anyone. It's about being forgotten by the person whose love we thought defined us. The person whose approval we chased just to feel like we mattered. But you're not someone's afterthought. You're not a prop in their story. You don't have to beg for a spot in someone's life just to feel seen. Here's the truth. You don't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than anything else. When you pull back your energy, your time, your care, that's what echoes in their memory. And when they finally notice the empty space you left, you won't be standing there, waiting for them to remember you. You'll already be gone somewhere you matter. not as a fading memory, but as someone real, irreplaceable, alive. I remember getting stuck in that exhausting loop with someone I loved. Every conversation felt like I was defending myself in court. I'd spend days, sometimes weeks, trying to prove I deserved respect, like if I just found the perfect words, the perfect moment, it would finally click for them. I basically wrote them a manual on how to love me, how to be present, added page after page, but they never bothered to read it. They never cared. Still, I kept going. I explained myself over and over, hoping maybe this time if I said it just right or tried a little harder, they'd finally choose me the way I'd been choosing them. What I didn't realize back then, over-explaining wasn't just a habit. It was survival. I was trying to control what I couldn't, managing their feelings, their choices, their ability to see my value. And in the process, I abandoned myself. Later, I learned that over-explaining is often a trauma response, leftovers from old wounds that taught us love had to be earned, justified, performed for, or it could be taken away. It goes deeper than we think. If you grew up having to defend your feelings, or you were dismissed or ignored, you end up swallowing this message. You're not enough unless you convince me you are. So you start explaining yourself to everyone, partners, friends, bosses, even strangers. You narrate your worth. You explain every action. You beg for understanding because you're terrified of being misunderstood, terrified of being dismissed without a chance to plead your case. But here's what really shook me when I finally stopped. People who truly value you don't need all that. They just get it. They just show up. They don't need a step-by-step guide to treat you well. The ones who demand endless explanations, they're not confused, they're comfortable. Comfortable knowing you'll keep bending, keep justifying why you should be allowed to stay. There's a name for this. In psychology, intermittent reinforcement. When someone gives you just enough attention to keep you hooked, but holds back enough to keep you chasing. It's addictive. You keep trying to win them back, thinking it's about your worth, but really it's about their control. It's harsh, but it's true. You can't force someone to care. You can't explain your way into being valued. You can't argue your way into being loved. Here's the move. Stop explaining. Let silence say what words can't. Let your boundaries do the talking. Let your absence be your answer. Because if they wanted to, they would. If someone truly values you, they'll show it. No script needed. Stop handing out blueprints for how to love you. The right people will build with you. The wrong ones expect you to build the whole house. Then wonder if they even want to move in. You don't have to be a tour guide for your own worth. Just stand still and watch who actually walks beside you. Without a map, the hardest part isn't leaving, it's what comes after. People think silence is the end. That once the mind is built to notice what's gone. The real tragedy is that we spend so much time trying not to be forgotten by people who already made us feel forgettable. We fight to stay in lives that never fully welcomed us, and here's where the fear really cracks open. We're not afraid of being forgotten by just anyone. We're afraid of being forgotten by someone whose love we thought defined us, someone whose validation we believed we needed to feel worthy. But you are not someone's afterthought. You are not a placeholder in their story. And you don't need to hustle for visibility in someone's life to prove that you matter. The simple truth is this: you don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes silence is the only language people finally understand. It's the quiet withdrawal of your energy, your time, your effort that rings the loudest in the corridors of their memory. And when they finally notice your absence, when they feel the ache of the space you left behind, you won't be standing there waiting for them to remember. You'll already be somewhere else, somewhere where you are valued, not as a fading memory, but as a living, breathing, irreplaceable presence. I remember being caught in this exhausting cycle with someone I cared about. A cycle where every conversation felt like a courtroom and I was constantly on trial. I would spend hours, days, sometimes weeks trying to explain how I deserved to be treated. As if with just the right combination of words, the right tone, the rig, each timing, I could convince them to see me, to respect me, to value me. It was like I was handing them the manual for how to love me, how to show up, how to be present. But no matter how many pages I added to that manual, they never seemed to read it. They never seemed to care. And yet, I stayed in that loop. I explained myself over and over like a broken record. I thought, maybe if I say it differently this time, Maybe if I approach it more gently, maybe if I try harder to make them understand, they'll finally get it. They'll finally choose me the way I've been choosing them. But what I didn't realize back then was that over-explaining wasn't just a habit. It was a survival mechanism. It was me trying to control what was ultimately outside of my control. It was me trying to manage their feelings, their choices, their willingness to value me. And in doing so, I slowly abandoned myself. I've since learned from psychology that over-explaining is often a trauma response. It's the echo of old wounds that taught us love is something we have to earn, something we have to justify, something that can be taken away if we don't keep performing perfectly. And it's deeper than we think. When we grew up having to justify our feelings, when we were dismissed or minimized, we internalized the silent message, "You are not enough unless you convince me you are." So we start to explain ourselves not just to the people who don't value us, but to everyone, our partners, our friends, our bosses, and to strangers. We narrate our worth. We over-clarify our intentions. We beg for understanding because we are terrified of being misunderstood. We are terrified of being rejected without a fair trial. But here's what shook me when I finally stopped. People who truly value you don't need that level of explanation. They just get it. They just feel it. They honor you without needing a step-by-step guide on how to treat you well. And the people who require endless explanations, the ones who make you work so hard just to matter they're not confused. They're comfortable. Comfortable knowing you'll keep bending. Comfortable knowing you'll keep justifying why you should be allowed to stay in their life. I discovered something called intermittent reinforcement in behavioral psychology. It's when someone gives you just enough kindness to keep you hooked, but pulls away just enough to keep you chasing. It creates a psychological addiction. You keep trying to win back their attention, thinking it's about your worth, when in fact it's about their control. It's a hard pill to swallow. You cannot convince someone to care. You cannot explain your way into being valued, and you cannot argue your way into being loved. Well, the simple trick: stop explaining completely. Let your silence be the answer. Let your boundaries be the language you speak. Let your absence be your explanation. Because the truth is, if they wanted to, they would. If they truly valued you, they would show you without ASC. Ripped. Stop handing out blueprints on how to love. You, the right people, will build with you naturally. The wrong ones will expect you to construct the entire house, and then question whether they even want to move in. You don't have to be a tour guide for your own worth. You just have to stand still long enough to see who actually chooses to walk beside you without needing a map. The hardest part isn't walking away. It's what comes after. People think the silence is the end. That once you stop chasing, you stop explaining yourself, that's when the chapter ends. But no one warns you about what comes next, the raw, empty space that shows up. Suddenly, it's just you. No distractions, no conversations, nothing to apologize for, no texts left to send. Just you sitting there with yourself. And honestly, that's where a lot of people break down. That's where I broke down. I kept thinking I was ready to move on. I figured I could handle the silence, but once you're actually in it, facing that deep ache of being ignored or tossed aside, it's scary as hell. The silence messes with your mind. You start questioning everything. Did I screw up? Should I have tried harder? Am I even worth remembering? I remember pacing my room, phone in hand, typing out message after message I never sent. It made me feel a little less alone, like I still had some connection. I'd hold my breath every time my phone lit up, hoping to see their name. I'd daydream about them coming back, about them finally realizing I was worth more than how they treated me. But here is the truth right there, in that lonely pit, fighting the urge to chase after someone. That's where courage is born. Psychologists call it distress tolerance. It's about sitting with pain, not running from it, not numbing it, not rushing to fix it. Most of us don't mess up boundaries because we're weak. We just can't stand how uncomfortable it feels to keep them. Setting a boundary isn't the hardest part. Holding it is. Holding the silence, holding the ache, not reaching out to someone who never reaches back. Then, eventually, something shifts. It's quiet, but it's real. You realize you weren't really waiting for them. You were waiting for yourself to show up, waiting to reclaim your own energy, to honor yourself finally. The space you dreaded, the silence you hated, it turns out to be a sanctuary. It teaches you to trust yourself, respect your limits, love yourself hard. The most powerful kind of courage isn't standing up for yourself in a fight. It's standing alone, choosing yourself when nobody else does, picking peace over approval, dignity over validation, your own life over longing. And when the world finally notices that strength in you, it won't be because you begged or explained yourself. It's just because you're there fully, unapologetically real. That's the win, not getting them back, not getting the last word, not earning approval, just realizing you're enough. With or without anyone cheering you on, you set the table. You own the space. The chair is yours. The power is yours. All the love you were searching for outside, you've been building it inside all along, so you stand quiet, steady, free. You stop chasing. Once you stop explaining, the chapter closes. But no one tells you about the brutal, raw space that follows. The space where you sit with yourself. No distractions, no conversations, no apologies to write, no text to send, just you alone. And that's where most people crack. That's where I cracked. I thought I was ready to let go. I thought I had the strength to go silent. But sitting in that silence, facing the deep ache of being ignored, discarded, or devalued, it's terrifying. It's in that silence where you start asking yourself, did I make a mistake? Should I have tried harder? What if I'm not worth remembering? I remember pacing my room, picking up my phone, typing out long messages I never sent just to feel like I was still connected somehow. I would hold my breath, waiting for their name to light up my screen. I'd fantasize about their return, their sudden realization that I was worth more than the way they treated me. But here's the quiet truth. That moment when you're sitting in the pit of your own loneliness, when you're fighting the urge to chase, that is the birthplace of courage. Psychologists call this distress tolerance, the ability to sit with painful feelings without running, without numbing, without rushing to fix them. Most of us don't fail at boundaries because we're weak. We fail because we can't stand the discomfort that comes with enforcing them. We think setting boundaries is the hardest part, but it's not. Holding them is holding tea. He's silence. Holding the ache, sitting in the quiet grief that follows when you no longer reach for the person who doesn't reach for you. And then comes the moment, the quiet revelation, the shift. You realize you were never waiting for them. You were waiting for yourself to stand, to reclaim your energy, to honor your own presence. The space you feared, the silence you dreaded, it becomes a sanctuary. It teaches you to trust your instincts, to respect your boundaries, to love yourself fiercely. You discover that the most profound form of courage isn't confrontation, but absence. It's choosing yourself when no one else does. Choosing your peace over approval, your dignity over validation, your life over longing. And when the world finally notices your calm, your strength, your self-possession, it won't be because you begged. It won't be because you explained. It will be because you existed fully, unapologetically, authentically. And that quiet triumph is the best ending. Not a return, not a reconciliation, not a final approval, but the discovery that you are enough, always, with or without anyone else's validation. You are the author of your table, the host of your own presence. The chair is yours. The power is yours. The love you were seeking elsewhere, you have been building inside all along. And so you remain, standing, silent, unshakable, free,